Good morning. It is Friday. It's Good Friday. So if you're a follower of Christ, it's a very, very important day in history. So I hope you have a great Good Friday. Today we're going to talk about timing and markets as it relates to exiting your business. So one thing to think about: 100% of us are going to exit our business at some point in time. That's why I do what I do. 100% of us. And I just want you to be prepared. So these are questions that commonly come up. The first one's going to be, when's the best time to sell? Well, there's a couple things to think about. And we're going to talk about the market here in a second, but let's talk about how you feel. So if you're feeling run down, if you're feeling like you're not having fun, if you're feeling like you want to harvest some of your life's work, it's probably a good time to sell, or at least think about selling. Now keep in mind, by the time you're ready to sell, you probably have already left some chips on the table. There are things that you can do ahead of time, things that people like me who are CEPAs, Certified Exit Planning Advisors, can guide you through to help you take more chips off the table when the time comes. So I always like to say, when the time's right for you is when you should sell. How long does selling take? That is a loaded question. Selling can take years or it can take months. I will say that depending on what the financing vehicle is that the buyer is using, that oftentimes plays into it. So let's say you're getting an SBA loan. There's an approval process. You're dealing with the government. It's not necessarily a fast thing. And so you just got to think about the funding vehicle that's coming in. If it's private equity that's buying, they may do a ton of due diligence. But I always like to say, if you prepare yourself for a 6-month window, depending on the type of business, once you've got a contract and you go through due diligence and you actually get to closing and you go to your bank and you've got more zeros than you used to have, that's a good way to think about it. What makes a good market for selling? That's a tough one because it depends on a couple things. Overall interest rates, what's happening in the capital markets, but also what's happening within your industry. So if there's a ton of consolidation, like there is right now in home services, private equity has come down to Main Street because they've run out of deals to buy. So it's a pretty good time right now if you're running a plumbing company, HVAC, those types of things, to consider selling, because it's favoring sellers right now because there's a lot of capital that needs to get deployed and it's trickling down to Main Street. So it really is kind of industry specific, and then you layer on top macroeconomic and you kind of come up with a great answer. So how do economic conditions affect exit? They definitely do. At a macro, M&A is impacted by, who's running the various departmental entities, right? When it comes down to the businesses that I like to help, a lot of it has to do with how freely cash flow is deployed in the markets, the capital markets, tied to interest rates, liquidity, things like that, and frankly, just overall optimism. So you definitely play into the global economy, even if it's just the mindset of prospective buyers, which leads us to the last one, which is, can you time the market? I would say no. I don't feel like you can. And in my career, I've had a couple things that have proven that to be true. Call them black swan events. When I was running marketing services at United Real Estate Group, and 2007, 2008 happened and things were bad. Like, you couldn't time the market there. And then we also look at what happened back in March of 2020 with the pandemic and the world shut down. So there's complexity in the world, there's unknowns, there's things that we absolutely cannot control. And so trying to time the market, I don't feel like makes a ton of sense. Kind of like if you ask that same question to your wealth advisor, they'd be like, well, no, in the aggregate things go up, but trying to time the market is very challenging. So my counsel to you, and what all this means and what I tell people is, you can't control the macroeconomic. What you can control is what's happening in your own house being your business. Do what's right for you. Be proactive when you're thinking about exiting your business, and have faith in the fact that you've done great work and that things are going to materialize the way that you want to. And that you also have surrounded yourself with a smart advisory team that will help advise you on things that you're kind of scared of. Until now, I'll see you next week.